Hello, everybody, and welcome to the YouTube Mall Builders Tuesday night show. Tonight's show is Weathering Mainline to Workbench with Ralph. I want to say go to YouTube Mall Builders. There you can check the schedules for the shows. Tuesday and Wednesday shows are at 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock Eastern Time. And the Thursday show is at 9 o'clock Central, 10 o'clock Eastern Time. I've been practicing that all week so I wouldn't mess it up. But also be sure and click on the e-magazine and sign up for a notification so when it comes out you'll be notified. And also we got an announcement to make. It's been posted on Bill Van Linton's Facebook page. He used to be a member of the community. That he passed away sometime last week. So sorry to hear that. And that's all really know. Don't know what kind of arrangements or anything were made. So, but anyhow, we're sorry to hear about it. Yeah, he's finally got to the last stop on the train. So he's done got off at the last station. Anyhow, we'll get rocking and rolling here. Ralph is at his workbench and he's raring to go. So, Ralph, why don't you go ahead and take it away here? Let me get over and. Alrighty, now you're on screen.
How you doing, guys? I thought for tonight we would do something a little bit different. It's still, to me, classified as weathering. It's part of doing your scenery, and if you want to make it look, at least the way I feel, my opinion, you want to make it look realistic. So I'm going to show you the way I do it. I don't know whether you can see in the background here. This is all plaster rock work made from latex molds that some of them most of them I've made myself. Some of them were from Woodland Scenics and others from Sterling Models. And I go out to Home Depot or a building supply and buy plaster pairs. And in doing so, you can make your own molds or castings using molds like this. This one here is a brick wall, and when it's done, it looks like that. The way that I treat this normally, so here's a section of rock. You'll notice it's a slightly different color. I have a gallon bucket of this beige color that I usually seal all my plaster with before I do any highlights or colors or whatever. So when I've done this brick wall is around my harbor as part of my harbor scene, and that's the only time that I did not put the base coat, the beige color, on. All I did was I had some water that I use when I clean my brushes. One of the things that I use after I put the beige on is I got this from Home Depot. It's Behr Premium Plus paint. I guess that's a quart. They don't tell me in Imperial. They tell me it's 857 milliliters. Anyway, the color is called Thorny Branch, and that's sort of that brown color. So when I do the painting of the rocks, after I've done that, I come back at it with the Thorny Branch. So I'm going to show you the difference, and I'm not sure whether you can see it properly. Okay, so this side has the beige underneath it. This side does not. But what I did with this, once it was on, well, I did it with both of them. Once I painted it on, I came back with just a brush loaded with water and started to take it off. while it was still fresh paint. And then you can color it whatever color you want. What this dark color does is it fills in all the deep crevices. And you can leave it as dark as you want because you come back at it. Another thing I've done is I went to Benjamin Moore, got some paint chips of gray. And I guess, I don't know whether you can see the two colors there. One's darker than the other. I went through about 5 or 6 different paint chips in the little containers, probably about half of that you can get the paint color in. And I sampled it. I sampled each one, and I played around with them to see which one I liked the best. I ended up with these two colors. So once I have the brown on, I then use the darker gray and put it on like so. And what that does, now it gives me the rock color, but I also have, if it's a really detailed rock, you won't get the gray in all the crevices because it's a thick paint. There's another piece. So what I do after this is I come at it with the second container, this lighter gray, and go right over top of this. And I guess we can do that. I can show you. And it's not a matter of putting it on heavy and thick. It's almost like a dry brushing technique. Come on. There we go. Oops. Problem with the new paints, the cans start to decay. You see the rust forming inside the lid? The paint's still good, but anyway, so I'll use what's on the lid. And so all you need is just a little bit on the brush. Get this out of the way. A little bit on the brush. I dab it just a bit on some paper, and then you come back and as you do this, you can go in every direction you want. If you see there's a spot you missed, you go a little deeper and dab it or whatever. But now you have contrast from the high points and the low points. When that dries, it'll dry. Paint always goes a little bit darker when it dries. So you'll see that it'll change color. I'll do this one. And if you want to cover up as much of the darker gray, that's fine. Thing is, this is all house paint. It's not any special paint that you have to go out and get from a hobby shop. You can get it from any paint store. And it doesn't have to be Benjamin Moore. It doesn't have to be Sherwin-Williams. It can be whatever is most available to you. So when that dries, and it looks like this one's drying already, I can help it along with my trusty little Okay, so the condition that I end up in is something like this. Okay, this here part here. So now that's got the two grays on it. It's got the thorny branch underneath with the beige color underneath that. Then to do highlights, you can take any kind of white paint you want. There's some Vallejo model color. This is off-white, or Tamiya XF2. They both work. The Tamiya I can work from the jar. The other one I have to squeeze it out. So what you need is a brush that they call for dry brushing. And this here is meant for dry brushing. It's very stiff bristles. Yep, it's very round. Looks like a hair's coming out, but that doesn't matter. So I dip it into paint, dab it or blot it on a paper towel, and come back and just hit the high points. The nice part about this, if you don't like the way it looks, you put the last gray that you used, you put it back over the top and start over again. Okay, so with that done, you can take a bottle mixture of isopropyl alcohol and India ink, and to a quart I wouldn't put more than a half a teaspoon. Put it in a spray bottle and just spritz it. And the black India ink, and don't worry whether it says water repellent or water resistant, doesn't matter. That's when it's dry, not when it's wet. And you spritz it on, and what it'll do, it'll find the crevices and make them even darker. Where'd my brush go? There it is. And you scrub it in before it's fully dry. You scrub it in, it spreads it out even more. Okay, so when I did this part of my layout, I was in the process of putting in a rock garden for my wife. I had 2.5 tons of rock, and every time I put a rock in place, I'm thinking to myself, this would make an excellent mold for me for my layout. And that's what I did. I ended up making molds as I was going along, and it was amazing. So I had all these molds. So how do I put it together? I used a cardboard webbing method, where the strips of cardboard, they interlace together like a basket weave. And in some cases, I used styrofoam to build it up a little bit, and then put the cardboard on. Then I put plaster cloth, and I came back like in this area in here, and in here it's Sculptamold. This is the rock. That's the rock. That's the rock. Once the Sculptamold was in place, or the rocks went in on first, then the Sculptamold around it just to mold it in so you don't see any seams. And my 2 favorite tools for working with this, that's a blade from a saber saw on a handle. And I think that's the same handle that works on the side of one of the drills that I have. I made it so it's a clamp to hold the blade on. I think you can get these things anywhere like this. Or you get a hole saw that they use for cutting drywall. The other thing is this rasp. This thing is curved on one side. It's got medium and coarse grading on it. On the other side, it's flat, coarse and medium. And what I would do is basically cut out my rocks with this, and it works beautifully. I mean, I only went a few strokes. That's already 1/8 of an inch gone. And that's how I cut my rocks and fit them together, and then use the file to fine shaping. You can even use the teeth of the blade lightly to shape it even more. This is how I ended up with all of this. I worked very hard at trying to make it look real, and I think I came up with a good solution. The major part, though, is the coloration. For every area in the country, there's a little bit different color. When I see the rocks and mountains up here, I see grays and blues. Even though sometimes you'll see granite, which is sort of on the pinkish side. A lot of guys try and model the color that they see. If you had pink granite on the side of a road cut or a rail cut like this, it's not going to look right. The colors don't scale too well. So you have to sort of tone it down a bit, make it more of a brownish color. And you can do that by coming in with your airbrush. Now, I don't know whether you can see this spot right here. I colored that with an airbrush, and I came right along this line with the airbrush. And I did it up in here as well. So you have the almost like stratification lines where the rock has changed its chemistry. And then like I did here with the white highlight. One of the things that works out, I mean, to me, the highlights are what make it. If you have a rock that has a high detail, like this one was, there's another one around the corner here. I guess you can see this one here. It's fairly detailed. And once you do the white highlights on it, that'll just pop. And then spritz it with the black ink alcohol. So the other method that I was talking about now is like when I do the walls like this. That side is with the beige undercoat. This side is raw plaster. And all that is the dirty water from cleaning my brush when I put the thorny branch on the plaster. So I keep the dirty water. So when you keep the dirty water, where's a piece? Let me get rid of the white. Keep stirring it around because it's so much water in it. It tends to want to settle out. Just keep moving it around. Come with a real sopping wet brush and paint it. And it'll soak right into the plasterwork. And all it is the water that's carrying the paint residue into your rock work. If you really want to, at that point, you can go back, clean that off. Should have brought myself a rag, but anyway, where's my other brush? If you come back with a lot of water, you can wash it off the high points. If you want to see more detail of the stone. So there's the two, one done with the washing it off and one without. Do it once more. You can even use this water if you wanted to and go back over this work before putting the white on to give it a bit more detail in the crevices, because it's not going to sink into the surface very well because it's been painted. So it'll sort of find its way into the crevices and stick there. Let's see. It's like spritzing it with the ink alcohol. So when it dries, it'll dry with that tint of brown on it. Okay. With the grass work here, all I did was take some Woodland Scenics, I forget what it's called now, the clump foliage, sprinkled it on, let it fall off the edges and catch these other shelves and so on, and then came back with a little bit of rubbing alcohol in a squeegee sort of thing, a ball, you know, the eyedropper, that's the word. Add the alcohol and come back with a mixture of white glue or scenic cement. It's fixed in place. Now that that's done, I can come back and do static grass on that.
I got a question.
Okay. Question?
Hillbilly Railroad.
Yep.
How you doing, Scott? Hadn't seen you for a while. He goes, paint. How long should you wait after you get them set? I guess between the different colors of coats.
Well, first off, when you're doing the plaster, make sure that you give it at least 48 hours. You're going to feel at some point it's going to feel cold. If it feels cold, that means it's still damp. It'll still take paint, but it won't take it as readily as when it's dry. When it's dry, it's like a sponge. Between paint, this stuff here, I mean, when you paint a room, it's usually, with the latex paint, it's usually dry within an hour or so. So you can move on to your next color. And if you don't put it on really, really thick, it'll dry fairly quickly. So that's what I've been doing. Yep. Work it in lighter coats and so on. And by the time you're finished, say you're doing a 3-foot section, by the time you get finished over here, you can go back and start at the beginning with your next color, because it'll probably take you a half an hour, 45 minutes to do a 3-foot section and do it completely with all the nooks and crannies and crevices. Okay. Nathan's asking, how do you make the molds for the rocks? Woodland Scenics, at the moment, unless you go to an artist supply store, you're going to have to buy liquid latex. And you brush it on. Where's my rock? I don't have one handy that I can show you. But you brush it on top of, let's say this is actually a piece of stone, real stone, and I want to make a mold of that. So what I would do is I would paint the liquid latex on it, on everything but that side. Leave that side open. So you just paint it on and give yourself, if you want, you can give yourself an edge like that is, right? Or it doesn't matter, you can just do down the side, and that's good enough. You keep keep adding layers. It takes about 5-6 layers, and then add some medical gauze. You know, that roll of stuff that looks like mesh that they wrap wounds with. That's what you want to put over the top, just a piece, just enough to cover the top and a little bit of the edge. And you put that on the wet latex, and then you come back another layer of latex on top of that, so it bonds it to the layer below. I end up making about 12 to 14 layers of latex before the mold is usable. And once you have it, you can pull this out. This will come out on its own, and you end up with something like this. Now this is a mold from Sterling Models, and this rock was as well. But it's basically the same idea. When you lay it down flat on the table, what I've done, because this little lip that's here is about 1/8 of an inch, maybe 3/16 of an inch thick, I cut a piece of cardboard box with an opening in it the size of this, and I drop this down into the opening. So now it keeps these flaps level. You mix up your plaster the way they recommend on the box, or the pail or bag or whatever, however you get it, and you pour it in here and you let it dry. And with this, when I did the walls of my harbor, I used the saw to cut this stuff, and I fit it together like you do woodworking, mitered corners and stuff like that. If I was going around a 90-degree corner, and try and match up the stonework. Obviously, this is not straight line mortar joints, but you try and do the best you can. And when you're working with the mold, I don't know whether you can see the contrast in that. So if I was going to make a wall that was about that big, then I would mark it on the back, because it's easier to cut on this flat surface than it is on the front surface. Mark it on the back where I want to cut. Use that saw, and because it's a nice long blade, it's what, about 6 inches blade, 6-inch long. You can even use a hacksaw blade, and just keep going back and forth. And when you get about 3/4 of the way through, it'll pretty well snap. And when it does snap, you get an edge like that, and you just clean it up with the file that I showed you, so that now it looks like that. And when I fit them together, I don't have a straight edge here. See, in this one here, I left it so that the last little bit didn't break through. Well, it brought some of this brick faces with it, which is good, because now when you put this here, that brick sits on top of the other one, and all you have to do is go back with some plaster of Paris and fill in the cracks, and work it with a little knife blade or something, so that it doesn't look like it's just a mitered joint. Any other questions? Okay.
All right, let's see here.
This is the wizard speaking.
Yeah.
Behind the wall.
Yeah. Hey, Ron Cloyce, how you doing? He said, I use a similar technique for coloring my rocks. Here's a couple of videos. I guess he's got a couple of videos on his channel of him doing it. Dwight said, nice looking stones, Ralph. Would this work with brick also?
Brick walls of like houses?
Yeah, I'm assuming so.
As long as it's plaster, yeah.
Yeah. And we got a new.
Go ahead.
Got a new guy here, JPAAUWE9. Do you have preferences on the type of brushes that you use?
The only brush that I have a preference for is this one, when I'm doing the beige color, and then the thorny branch color. After that, you can pick and choose whatever you want. If you took like this is a really soft-haired brush, it's too soft. I just happen to have this here tonight because I couldn't find my other one. But you can get brushes like that with a slightly smaller bristle, shorter, but they're a little bit harder. And that's basically what you want, because you want to be able to go across without the brush curling back and staying like that. You want it to stay flexible. So this one here, doesn't matter whether it's wet or not, it always comes back to its original point where it started. And this is a round brush. This is actually meant for painting windows in a house, a real house, and when to doing fine work, fine detail work around window panes and things like that. But I have all my brushes I managed to abscond from my wife. She's a craft person, and she's not doing it anymore, so I reap the benefits. I get her paints, craft paints, if I need them, and most of her brushes. The round brush I was using, that's one of hers. She used to do a lot of dry brushing. So I thank my wife, Jane.
CPR Train, he said, this is very good. He's liking it. Let's get on down here. Yeah, Ron, you can't put the dots. You have to spell that out, DOT, when you put a link in. So Ron Kleiss was saying that the chat will not allow him to post links. Just check out my YouTube page. And let's see, Hillbilly Railroad, do you wash the rocks before you do the rubber, before you make the mold?
If there's any dirt and mud on them, yes. Otherwise, no. Because this little bit in here that's very rough, and up in here, that was because there was some stuff stuck on there, and it made it look good. It gave it a little bit finer detail to scale it to my layout. I model in HO, so if you clean it out and the rock is too clean a face cut, it's not going to look right.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, Edenville brother said that's where he gets his brushes too. It's from his wife.
It's a given, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. Now,
right.
don't go
well,
by
the wizard will shut up now. I'll let you continue.
the wizard. Okay. Don't go by this bottle. This just happens to be a bottle that I keep refilling with mineral spirits, because I use a lot of AK and MIG ammo products for doing my weathering, which most of you already know already. But what I'm going to do with this, I guess I should put this away for just a few minutes. I don't want to spill it. And for anybody watching that has ever had an accident with a paint bottle or a glue bottle, I recommend you do something like this. It's just a block that's made out of a 2x6, and I cut the holes big enough to put these jars in. There's no way they're falling over. I had that happen to me. I was on my way, this was 2013, on my way to the Fine Scale Show in Peabody, Wisconsin? No, Massachusetts. And the little 2-inch by 2-inch diorama that I was working on, I was putting the final touches on. And I had a bottle of very dark stain sitting open. And I'm dipping into it and doing what I had to do. And I went to reach for something else, and I knocked it over. I got it on me. I got it on my keyboard for the computer. Thank God I have carpet tiles in the basement. It got onto those, which I was able to clean up. And it even went on the 2-inch diorama. That was my main concern. I cleaned that up first and then went and cleaned the other things. The carpet tile, it's, I think it's 20 by 20. It could be 24 by 24. I'm not sure. But I just picked it up, went to the laundry tub, bunch of mineral spirits, and I rinsed out the stain, and it came out fine. So if you're doing any work in your layout room, it's a good thing to have a carpet on the floor. And the best one is, to me, my opinion, is carpet tile. Because you don't have to do the whole thing. You don't have to do under the layout, but in the aisleways and so on, it works great. Okay, I'm going to show you another little technique that I use. We've got the white and so on color in there now. All right, where's my little elastic? The lobster claw elastic again. I mean, it's not that difficult to open these jars, but this knurling that's on the cap, it hurts your fingers, or it hurts mine anyway if it's on that you can't turn it. Okay, so the whole idea with this now, and if any of you guys know the model railroader called Mike Confalone, you can see some of his videos on Train Masters. He uses this method. And all I do is take a little bit of paint on my brush. I mean, this is a tiny brush. And you put little dabs here and there. Yeah, and there's a good reason for that. And I'll show you in a minute. There, okay, yeah, I'm putting it in the crevices. And like I said, there's a good reason for it. Okay. Oh, I hate small tubes. There we go. If it's on too tight, the whole tube twists like a corkscrew. All right. Same thing. But you can put it in different places. This is yellow ochre, and the one I used before that is burnt sienna. And I mentioned these artisan colors before. Water mixable oils. These are the ones that I use in my weathering. They are oil paints, so you can use them just like you use oil paints. So with those two colors, yeah, we'll just do those for now. Open up my bottle of Varsol, or not Varsol, mineral spirits. And I have a half inch brush, and this one is fairly soft bristled. Doesn't have to be the real stiff. But what you do is, first off, you just dab it on a paper towel so that you only have a little bit of spirits, and start dragging it down. Some of it's going to disappear, and that's okay. Sometimes you get the streaks, sometimes you don't. And if that's not good enough for you, you can go back and do some more. Like if you wanted to put the strato lines on it, like I did with the airbrush, you can do it with this as well. Works the same way. Let's see, go across here. Just drag it down. So this is going to give you what will look like iron that's coming out of the rocks with the moisture. Yep. And you can keep on going and just, I mean, I get lost when I do this stuff. I just keep going and going and going. Okay. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, while you're doing your Energizer bunny rabbit thing, just keep going and going and going. Let's see here.
Are there any more questions?
JPA. I won't go through the whole thing. He said Mike's layout is the one for me. Simply amazing. This fella here, he comes in. He's a little aggravating at times, but he's N&W. Goes by the name of Andy Crawford. He said,
Oh
"Confalone?"
no! Who
Question
let the
mark.
door out? Who left the door open?
He's got Confalone? Question mark. Yeah, heard of him? LOL. Mike C is my modeling crush. My fave layout ever.
Andy, why don't you come in here and be my sounding board? we can argue till the cows come home.
Yeah, yeah. And Michael said, can you use acrylic paints for that?
I've never tried it. I'm not sure. The reason I use oils is because you have a longer working time. It's easier to control. And if I'm not happy with this, I can just flood my brush with mineral spirits and I can take it all off. And all I have to do is wipe up the mess.
Yeah, Michael also put, or the oil paint's better, but I think you answered that just now when you're talking about that.
Yep.
I mean, water paint, acrylics have one look, and the oil paints just have another look.
Yep.
The oil paints in a lot of situations just has a lot better look to it. A little more real look, I guess.
Too much.
Yeah, Andy's got here. I'm around. I'm always down for a good argument. I mean, debate or discussion.
Heated
and,
or otherwise.
and Dwight said, sorry, oil and paint thinner. Ugh.
Dwight said what? Oil and paint thinner is what?
Ugh. Yuck.
Oh,
Evidently, he's
leave
not.
it to Dwight.
Yeah,
leave it to Dwight.
I don't think he's a fan. Yeah, each to their own. I've done a few rocks, and I really like it. Just I don't seal them. I like to look when I was using actually acrylic, the Woodland Scenics paints.
Yeah.
And it's painting those rocks. I just like the way it's soaked in. It seemed to really make it look like a natural, more natural type rock. Yeah, Dwight's laughing at his comments.
LOL.
He's tonight's comedian.
Isn't he always?
Yeah.
Okay, that was burnt umber that I used. So I'm not a fan of burnt umber here, but it's my go-to color when I'm weathering rail cars and locomotives.
Actually, it's giving it a nice highlight, really, from what I'm seeing here on camera. Of course, what you see in person looks different anyway.
Okay, guys, you must have more questions. I haven't explained it that well, have I?
Let's see. Yeah, Dwight sitting there, 1 foot snow formed 1 foot snowstorm predicted for Amherst. Ha ha ha. Yeah, okay.
Being smart again.
Yeah. Let's see. And Andy's got up here, love oils. Best trick in the mall paint there is, once I got over the fear. But I am loving the watercolors. Ralph turned us on to. Speaking of which, Ralph, is there any use for the watercolors here?
Good question. I really don't know. I would imagine that you could, but you don't have the same detail because, like with this, I'm flooding it with mineral spirits. If you did that with the watercolors, they would just disappear. If you wanted to, like I showed before, the stratification lines that I did with an airbrush, you could do that with a sponge. The only problem that you have with that is that the brush with the mineral spirits gets into the crevices where the sponge won't go. And I don't know whether those paints will work that well with the brush.
Yeah, let's see. Etherville said that no, it's going to rain at Amherst. I've heard a few other people say that too. Andy's got up here, and how are you keeping it from the tendency to look spotty? I've tried that leopard spotting tech and others, and I just about always get a spotty effect. Yeah, I've done that too. Got the same thing. Phil, how you doing, Phil? Said Woody's products are for the good enough look, but what Ralph is doing is for the artsy look, almost real. Sadly, the two don't go together very well.
Yeah, they do. If you have something that's sticking right out in your face when you come up to the layout, that's where you want your detail. If it's off in the distance, that's the good enough.
Yeah.
Unless your name is Andy Crawford.
David here says, this is the Bob Ross masterpiece, Happy Little Rocks.
It's funny you should say that because I was slapping my brush on the easel leg down here.
Yeah.
If you want to see something funny, you talk about Bob Ross, go to YouTube and search for what the heck's that comic book hero, Deadpool, something like that. And he's dressed up like Bob Ross with the fuzzy hair, and he's got the mask on, and he's doing a painting.
Oh, okay.
So those are my thoughts for tonight, or what I had to show you tonight. What I'm thinking of doing is the one episode that we had technical difficulties with. Can't talk. I can go back and look at that, and we can cover it in another episode, so that you don't miss out.
Yeah. Yeah, we could do that. See, down here in the south, you see a lot of that rust staining on rocks because we got a lot of iron ore in them, so that burnt umber right there just above the tunnel opening. That's
Here?
looking pretty good right there, yeah.
Yeah. And you can, even though it doesn't happen usually, but what it ends up doing is it comes down to the next level or crack and goes along a little bit. But like here, it's coming down. You can continue that down on the other face.
Yeah. Yeah, just pull it a little bit right there. on the flat spot.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, because water's going to take the least path of resistance anyway.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. All right, Hillbilly Scott, you can do the green to look like that, like moss, yo.
Yes. And what I found, I don't have it handy. Too bad I didn't hear that question before we started. Woodland Scenics makes a product that you actually pull it apart and pull it out into this little wispy things. Oh.
Yeah, it's like that fiber
excuse
feel.
excuse the shaky camera for a second. Can you see in behind? No, you can't.
Yeah, see? Well, it looks like green over behind the trestle.
Right in behind the trestle.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I've got that. It's a fibrous material. You can make it look like vines. You can make it look like moss. You can hang it in trees. So that's my offering for tonight, guys. Again, if you have any other questions that we haven't covered, you can reach me on almost every night. I'm on the chat, the regular chat. I have my own weathering page, Weathering a Touch of Yesterday. You can ask me questions there. You can send me picture or questions on in the YouTube Model Builders. Any way you want. If I have an answer, I'll give it to you. So that just about does it for me for tonight.
Well, a lot of them are saying thank you for the show. That very informative. They enjoyed it. All right, let's get over here and do the transition thing. All right, appreciate it, Ralph. Very good show. Very interesting. Some really nice looking rock work too. You do mail order?
It would make it kind of expensive shipping this stuff because it's not light, but it's not really heavy either. And then you can't guarantee that it will arrive in one piece.
Well, I mean, rocks are in pieces anyway, so.
This is true. This is true.
You know, a little touch-up painting. Hey, who would know? Alrighty. Well, go to YouTubeModelBuilders.com. There you can check the schedules for the Tuesday and Wednesday shows. They're at 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock Eastern Time. The Thursday night show is at 9 o'clock Central, 10 o'clock Eastern Time. And next show we've got will be this Thursday night. And dang, we're almost at the end of January. So be sure to tune in Thursday night, 9 o'clock Central, 10 o'clock Eastern Time. That's a show that I call the Somewhat Controlled Chaos Show, Johnny Small Train Talk. Yeah. And we do have some interesting discussions there. But anyway, also be sure and click on the email, sign up for an email notification when that comes out. And we shall see you Thursday night at 9 o'clock Central, 10 o'clock Eastern Time. Everyone have a good evening, and we'll see you later. Bye.